Hello, everyone, and welcome to Transforming Today Show. I am your host, Rebecca Weintraub, and today we're here with Coach Alison Proffit. How are you, Alison?
I'm great, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to chat a little bit more with you and tell you more about my story.
I almost couldn't sleep last night because the last time that we talked, I had so many questions and I was just like, I wanted to ask them then, but I knew I had to save it for the show.
Great. I can't wait to hear your questions.
Awesome. So first, please tell us how you serve others.
Yeah, so in my coaching practice, I am really passionate about working with human resources leaders, as well as leaders within organizations and entrepreneurs who are looking to really deeply connect with their heart and their purpose so that they can go out and kind of bring their heart to their work, whether it be within organizations or with entrepreneurs, really helping them serve their clients the best that they can.
I have so many questions about that, and that's what this interview will mostly be about, but I'm really curious about how you were led into HR and then now how you're into coaching with HR.
Yeah, so a lot of people say they fell into HR, and I did a little bit, but my journey was, I think, more intentional. Some people kind of get promoted into it because they do payroll or they were a recruiter. But when I was deciding what I wanted to be when I grew up and evaluating my kind of college choices and what I wanted to study, I decided that I wanted to do something in business and I wanted to do something that helped people. And I didn't really understand anything about HR, because who does when they're a high school senior, right? But we had a family friend who was graduating with a degree focused in human resources. So I met with her and just was like, what is it? What is human resources? What do you study? And so as she told me more about it, I was like, wow, that's really interesting. You kind of get to have a role in the business, actually in a very impactful way that touches finance stuff. It touches the legal stuff. It's touching the strategy, but then it's really also deeply connected with the people that are within the organization. So I thought this could be really interesting. And I didn't know where in HR I would land. I didn't think compensation and benefits would be my jam, so to speak. But I was really passionate about learning all that I could about all the aspects, because I could see how they all played together. My dad always worked in middle management type of roles when I was growing up. And my mom always worked kind of in service roles. She was a cook, she was a hairdresser, she was an entrepreneur. She started her own massage therapy business. So I kind of had this interesting upbringing where I had parents kind of in two different worlds, right? My dad was in a very corporate environment, and my mom usually was working for more smaller businesses or herself. And so I just kind of, as I was learning and growing in my educational background, I thought, wow, like there's so many different things HR could do. And I began to get really excited about the organizational development stuff and the human psychology aspect that goes into human resources, which was more than what I was thinking it was. And so that really just kind of sparked this thing for me. And I'll never forget one of my I think turning point moments in my personal life, and then also how I wanted to be as an HR professional, was my senior year of college. My dad had been sharing openly with me that his company was going to be doing layoffs, because obviously that was something I studied about. So he was talking to me about their process. And so on this particular day, I knew that he was getting ready to go in and do layoffs. And so I was thinking about him as I was preparing for my day a little bit later on. And I was watching TV, some daytime show, and the news popped on, and it was the planes flying into the World Trade Center. So this was on 9/11, and of course, we all, if you're old enough to remember what that experience was like for yourself or within your kind of hometown, if you were, you remember all the things about that day. My dad came home that evening, and his company had made him continue forward with laying those people off, despite the fact that 9/11 was happening. I mean, it's not like it happened, it was happening, and I remember thinking, my dad was so affected by that. And I remember thinking, like, where was the HR person? Where was somebody to kind of interject and say, hey, time out. If we've gone months planning this corporate event that has to take place based upon whatever financial things that were going on, we could hold off for another day or 2 weeks or whatever. It didn't make sense to me why it had to happen that day. At the time, I was still living in my kind of hometown area outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So being on the East Coast, there certainly were probably people that my dad laid off that day that either knew people that were affected by that or had family members that maybe worked up there. I mean, Philadelphia is not close from New York City. So it really was this kind of moment that I was like, I will always bring compassion and empathy into the work that I do and think about the people. And sometimes you hear companies and even other HR people talk about, like, HR isn't all about the people. It's not all about heart. It is about business. You have to be strategic, yada, yada, yada. Well, what a strategic decision it would have been to, like, not have my dad move forward in those things, right? Like, sometimes you have to put the people first. And it doesn't mean that it's not a decision that's going to be good for the bottom line, right? And then imagine the opinions of the company when that stuff happened. So I think that for HR people that may be watching this or listening, it's like, well, perhaps open your perspective a little bit and look at the long range impact of some of the things. It's okay to bring people and bring heart into your business decisions. So fast forward many years, I worked in HR for about, I think 12 years in. I kind of hit this point where I started to turn into an HR person that I had worked with before, somebody who gets to the point where they start really not liking people. In my early 20s, I had an HR director. He was fairly new in his job. He had worked in HR for 25 to 30 years. And on his second or third day, we were having a little team lunch. He was like, I really can't wait till I retire. I really hate people. And I remember thinking, like, you work in human resources. How do you hate people? And so in 2016, I started feeling like I was getting to that place where I was feeling like jaded and like, people are always doing, why can't people follow the rules? Why can't people come to work? Why do we have to address attendance issues? Like, just come to work, And I started to disconnect from that compassion and empathy that I knew is the real authentic me. And so that's really what led me into deciding to go and explore coaching. I had some really great coaches in my career, had actually even had an opportunity to work for a small coaching practice in an administrative and project role. So how cool is that to be able to work across from and alongside with a coach who is your coach, but you're working with them and seeing the impact of the work that they're doing and seeing how they're affecting executives who are in their 60s, make total life changes and show up differently in their workplace. And not even just kind of hearing the stories about it, but then seeing the metrics change, because we would always start off with doing some different measurements and surveys, and then seeing a year after the powerful coaching work and going in and doing some education with the teams, like seeing the metrics change, seeing people's satisfaction increase, seeing all of these things, not just the kind of anecdotal evidence, which was plentiful, quite honestly, but then also on the measurement side of it. So it was really kind of neat to be a part of that in a support way and see, wow, coaching can really make a difference. So at the point that I decided to pursue my coach training, I wasn't super clear that, like, I definitely was going to start a coaching business. I knew that was like always kind of a pipe dream that I had. But I think this could really help in my work, because we were in my organization I was working at. I was in an HR manager role, and there was also corporate HR above me. And so, there were different programs and initiatives that would get rolled out. And in your role, you kind of had to like support them wholeheartedly and sell them on it, right? Get the managers to be bought in on why it's important and why they should take a half day of their time to come and do this thing that the company says that they need to do, but maybe they're not really bought into it. So it was my job to help them buy into it. And sometimes I didn't always buy into it. And that was really hard for me. And as I began going through my program more and more, I was experiencing a lot more dissonance of what I felt was most impactful when leading organizations through change and helping to develop leaders and employees and unpack where is a performance issue really coming from. Why do we have this systemic turnover? Why are we having attendance issues? Really kind of, and the power of coaching, we ask a lot of powerful questions. And up until that point, I thought I'd always been coaching in my HR career. But what I learned was I actually was giving a lot more advice and I wasn't really coaching. And what an epiphany that was for me. And I started showing up differently in my work, and managers started noticing it, and they would come to me more instead of me having to go to them to say, hey, let's talk. They would come and knock on my door like, hey, I have this thing. Like, I was wondering if we could have a conversation. Inevitably, it turned into a coaching session. Mm-hmm. And they would walk out like, super impacted by 35 minutes of a conversation, which was really, really cool. And about 4 weeks after I finished my coach program, I actually was let go from my job. And I jumped into my coaching business because I thought maybe this is what the universe is saying is supposed to be. And my husband and I took an opportunity to move across country to California. He wasn't very happy in his job, so we had 3 weeks notice to kind of pack up and sell our stuff and move in with this stranger to care for her 2 horses and her 2 dogs and her property while she traveled for work. And we thought it would be a cool and low cost way to move across the country and experience something new. So we did that, and then we moved to Colorado. So that's where I am now. You can't see because I had to adjust my lighting, but there's beautiful views of the Rocky Mountains right outside my window here. And I've just kind of had a number of different experiences in the last year and a half, which included having 5 different mailing addresses, 4 different job losses. And really, if you continue to ignore the signs of the world, pointing you on the direction of the path that you are to be on to bring your gifts to the world, at some point you can't stop listening. You have to listen. Like, it's screaming so loud at me that my role is to go out there and be a support to those great HR people, or those great leaders who kind of have this gut intuition of this bigger thing than them, of how they can bring their true values and their true passions to the work that they're doing. And I think the world has bigger plans in store for me than for me just to be one HR person in one organization. I have a bigger impact to make. And the number of HR people I've talked to about some of my work who are like, wow, like, we need somebody like you. Like, thank you. It tells me that I'm going where I'm supposed to be. And I'm not even going there by force. Like, it's just like, I'm like floating there. It's this really, really cool thing that's happening.
I think a lot of times we lose the word human in human resources.
Yeah.
And when you look at a big organization all the way down to a small organization, what makes that organization run are its people. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, you can do surveys, you can, measure metrics, see if things are improving or not, but really it comes down to that one-on-one contact, like you were talking about, when that, let's say, manager came into your office and needed that 35 minutes. And, it would almost be impossible to assign one coach to every single person that works, no matter what the work is, whether it's a corporate setting or whether it's, a small business or a small shop down the street.
Yeah.
But with the coaching that you're doing, how does that impact start looking with the few people that you start taking on, and then more clients and more clients? What impact is developing as you talk to each one of your clients?
Yeah, so what's really interesting, and I think you can probably relate to this, that people come to be coached on one thing and end up uncovering that there's other stuff that within their truth, right, that they're just not honoring. And that's why they're having other things in their work life go wrong, or that they're stuck on, or they feel that dissonance. And the cool thing is I mean, I'm honored to get to be a part of people uncovering these massive shifts for themselves. I have one client, and she's not quite ready yet, but she has acknowledged, she's like, I can't believe all the changes you've helped me uncover in the last year and a half. So when her and I met, she was starting her business. She had just left her job, and she was basically ready to make this huge life shift. Her and her family were selling all their stuff and moving into an RV, and they were going to travel, and she was going to be an entrepreneur. And so I met her when she was sort of in the midst of this. And really, we met because we were both kind of in this situation where we were both becoming sort of transitioning out of our jobs. I was kind of pushed out the door, but she left hers. She voluntarily left her high paying job because she wanted to go on this kind of shift of her life and travel and work remotely and spend more time with her family. And fast forward a year and a half, she acknowledged some substance abuse issues, got herself treatment, recognized some toxic stuff within her marriage, filing for divorce, all from a place of like not anger. Like she's not angry. She's letting go of guilt and shame. When she reaches out to me now, instead of me having to coach her through those types of things and like saying like, well, let's talk about this guilt. Where is it coming from? Is it serving you? How true is it? All of those powerful questions. She like uncovers those questions in our conversation without me even having to ask. It's just I'm holding space for her. It is so amazing, Rebecca, how this woman has stepped so into herself. It's so beautiful. And like, we've talked about writing a book together. Like that's how powerful it's been for me to be her coach and for her, because I didn't give her advice, right? I'm not giving advice. I'm not her therapist. We've not dove into the past. I mean, her past has come up. And she did go to some therapy as well, like as a result of our coaching together. So there's all these great, powerful things that I get the honor of being a part of. And it's like, who am I to like have been blessed with coming across this wonderful woman's path who we were going to coach each other really for our business stuff. And it turned into her transforming her life in so many ways, for the betterment of herself, for her kids, and really for her husband, right? She's arrived at the point where she knows she can't fix this stuff. It's not hers to own. And she knows that them staying together isn't healthy for either of them. And it's just really beautiful how she's been able to get to that point. And I can't wait till she's ready to tell her story, because I know it's going to be really great for her and me, right? Like a testament to the power of the tools.
When you and I talked last week, I swear to God, my whole perspective shifted on HR, because I've worked in corporate for a long time, and my perception of my HR department is, okay, I'll only go to them if I absolutely have to, right? Because it's like, if I draw attention to myself, what could happen, right? It's kind of like this mysterious, dangerous place that I don't want to be navigating. I just want to put my head down and do my job, right? And do it well. And so, for people in HR who play this dual role, one role is to the population in their company or organization, and they have to play by the rules. They may have to fire and hire and have those difficult conversations. Behind all that is a human. And for me, if you ask me the question, like intellectually, I'd be like, oh yeah, they are human. But like, I've never seen it that way. I never have. Like I've never actually realized that these are people too.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what your take is on that, being able to kind of be in this dual role of being in HR for so long, understanding what both sides are like, and now helping those in HR find the balance and have a way to express themselves. What is that like?
Oh, it's so exciting to me, um, because I feel like I was blessed to have had exposure to that really young,
Mm.
right? And what an honor that was, that I was exposed to coaching. I was able to see what the impact of approaching organizational change and leadership development and team building and all of that stuff, but from a very humanistic place. So for me, it's really, really exciting. Um, it's funny because when I first started my coaching journey, and I think I shared this with you, when I had lost my job, my HR job back in Pennsylvania, and decided to step into really focusing on my coaching business. I wasn't coaching HR people. I was kind of running away from corporate. I was almost like, I'm done with it, enough, right? We use the word catabolic in our energy leadership coaching, and that's kind of this kind of dragging you down and destructive sort of energy. And I felt very catabolic about it. I was jaded by HR in a lot of ways. Um, there's something that I think many people outside of HR don't know. So there's this idea of HR transformation, and there is a guy by the name of David Ulrich, and he's viewed as a thought leader in the human resources world. And he presented probably 20 years ahead of his time about this transformation model, excuse me, and that solid HR professionals have four components. They are the administrative expert, right? So that's like the hiring and the compliance stuff and background checks and all of the stuff, benefits, yada, yada. They are the change agents. So they are coming in and they are sort of being a disruptor to changing the course of an organization through its people, and also by bringing in whatever compliance related stuff that's coming down the pipeline that is going to affect the business. So it's kind of bringing that change agent energy to it. It is the employee advocate, who is on that people side. And then the fourth component is really being that strategic partner. So if you think about those four different roles, a really, really great HR person has the insight and the ability to do all four of those things. Do you know anybody that's really great at all those four types of things?
No, and I was like, where's the fifth box for the human, for them? Like,
Yeah.
isn't there a place for them to be their own individual too? Like,
So that's really interesting that you say that. So as I went through my coach training, I really got deeply connected and uncovered what my personal values are. And I uncovered these three top values of authenticity, freedom, and fun. And in some ways, I was really starting to show up that way in my work, which wasn't always really acceptable in the function, right? And I don't think that it has to be that way. I think that in certain circumstances, like when I think back to the situation my dad had when he had to lay people off on 9/11, like some authentic leader should have come in and said, hey, I'm not sure this is the right thing to be doing. Authentically, like that would have been me. I would have stepped in there and said, oh my gosh, like we're doing this other thing today. We need to stop that. And I wouldn't have felt guilty or ashamed or afraid, right? There's a lot of fear, I think, within the HR world, that we have to walk around with this mask on. And, we are mindful of what we post on social media because we enforce social media policies within the organization. We're afraid of speaking out about, even just within like our own social or professional groups about what things are going on, because we're afraid that we're going to put the wrong perception out there of us and then we'll become not hireable. And I think part of me is I have really come to a place of peace about that for myself, that a CEO may watch this video and be like, I would never want an HR person like that. There is risk there. And I'm okay with that because that's probably not a place I would want to be anyways, right? And so finding out like How can we play in the space of our values within the work that we're called to do? And there are people that are called to work in HR. It's like this inexplicable thing. I love HR. I love the idea of that 4-quadrant model. I have seen a lot of HR people that can do that. In larger organizations, oftentimes they are more able to play in that HR space that makes them happy and aligns with their values. But in smaller and medium-sized companies where they have to wear all 4 hats, it's hard for them. And they don't have a place to go. They don't have somebody to lift them up. They don't have a safe space. A lot of times, HR people can't have friends at work. Think about that. Who are your work friends?
You know, it's interesting. I'm going to pause you there for just a second, because I worked somewhere a long time ago in a corporate setting, and there was someone in HR who was very playful. And on many levels, it was so refreshing. And I kept thinking, like, in my head, like, I have all these like boxes around stuff, and like part of my life is to kind of like deconstruct these boxes and
Yeah,
okay, I don't need permission, or it's not supposed to be this way, right?
right.
So in my head, I'm thinking, why is she acting like this? Is she allowed to act like this? Like, does she know what she's giving off? And then the other part of me was like, oh my God, good for her. She's actually being her. Like, she's being authentic to who she is.
Yeah.
But the tragedy was that she didn't last long.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what your take is on that balance.
Um, well, it's funny that you asked that question, because I think I still rattle it around in my head a little bit of, is it possible to have that balance given what the corporate world is like nowadays? Um, it takes a willingness to like put yourself out there on a limb. And I did that in many ways, I think, in some of my work. Um, HR has been, I think, conditioned to mitigating risk and earning their seat at the table. I hear that all the time, and it makes me want to pull my hair out. Really, we have to earn a seat at the table. I believe that to be true, but when's the last time you've heard somebody say, well, accounting needs to earn their seat at the table, but the books are a hot mess, but they still get to come to the table? That's a hot button issue for me, as you can tell. That's me getting like angry, right? Not scary at all. And I think that the balance comes from, putting a stake in the ground about what you really believe is best for the organization and for the people and for the longer term betterment of society. Really, we all spend so much dang time at work. Imagine if your work could have these people who are supposed to be administrative experts, change agents, strategic partners, and employee advocates. Imagine if they could come to work feeling fully like they could be themselves. And because I think when you feel like you can be yourself, you show up better in all 4 of those roles. And I just think that the world would be a better or different place, a place where we were not just applying attendance policies in a black and white manner because we're worried about, not applying something consistently. I mean, I think like situations should be assessed on a situational basis. Does that mean it's easy? No, it makes it harder. It makes it more time consuming. But if we took a chance to really dive into the details of what might be going on in somebody's world, we may understand them differently. And then imagine if you were them. The last HR role that I had was a long-term care organization. So we were in a service industry, and it was in a inner city area of Philadelphia, where from a socioeconomic perspective, they were, it was a poorer, very racially diverse area, and one of the highest rates of violence in the city of Philadelphia. That's where I worked. And so our employees were those people. That was their life every day. And so being able to like work with these employees and starting to learn their stories and understand where it was they were coming from. I had a woman that came to work one day, and she came in to talk to me about a 401k issue. And she wasn't herself. She was usually very bubbly, very outgoing. And I was already in the midst of my coach program, so I had a lot of new skills in my toolbox. So she came to me, and my energy told me something was off with her, and I didn't know what it was. I'm not going to use her name, but I said, "Hey, are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, I'm just going through some family things." And I was like, "Well, if there's anything you need, know that I'm here. We have a lot of different resources, but sometimes when we're going through things, it's just helpful to have somebody to talk to." And she just started crying. Mm-hmm. And she was like, "My daughter's fiance just got murdered yesterday." And I was like, "Why are you at work? What are you doing here?" And she's like, I have bills to pay, and I really care about the residents, and I know that they would miss me if I wasn't here. So here she is thinking about all these other people besides herself. She was in there to get 401k money to help with funeral expenses. And I just remember thinking, like, why does she think she has to be here? Where there was something deeper there. And I know you and I did some breathing exercises before we started our video here. And I asked her if she was willing to try something different, because she was like, I could tell that she was like worried about saying the wrong thing, worried about showing herself. But it seemed clear to me that she didn't have anywhere else to go to talk about all these things. And so I asked her if she would be okay with trying something. And so, like, literally, we meditated for 5 minutes together. I put on a guided meditation recording. I did it with her so she didn't feel weird or alone. And afterwards, she was like, "I'm not sure that I've been breathing in the last 24 hours, And as we sat there and I was kind of holding space for her, and in our coach program, we're trained on this thing called energy leadership. And I pulled out this circle, and because I was almost trying to get her to be distracted for a moment from what she was feeling, because she was so deep in the feeling. And I could tell she felt a little shameful about what she was feeling. And she uncovered, she's like, I'm just trying to be there for everybody else. And I'm not even worrying about myself. She's like, "You know what? I'm angry." She's like, "I'm angry that this guy shot my future son-in-law." She's like, "I'm angry that my daughter is now going to be a single mother." She's like, I don't know anything about being a single mother. How am I supposed to be there for my daughter and tell her what it's like to be a single mother when that's not my story? And so we ended up, by the end, we spent an hour together, which, for all of that to unfold in an hour is pretty crazy, but it did. And she uncovered the fact that ever since her parents had died, she had not done any self-care. She'd been there for her family. She'd been there for her daughter. Now she was trying to be there for her daughter, who's now a single mom. So, she's got a 2-year-old, like all of these things. And I said, "So how do you think that's helping you in all of these other caregiver roles that you're saying you want to show up in?" And she was like, "I never thought about it that way." And I told her to go home. I was like, "Go home. I'm going to call your manager. Like, you do not need to come back to work." We talked about what those things look like. I gave her EAP resources and all these different things. And she stopped me in the hall. I think it was maybe like a week later. And she said, everybody there called me Miss Allison, which they were all older than me. So it was really interesting, the kind of respect level that kind of came into play there. But she was like, "Miss Allison, I've meditated every day since we talked." "I know, right?" And she said, "It's really helped me." Like, imagine that was an hour of my day. And then she became a champion for all these different things, because she worked in a department where people didn't trust HR and they were afraid to come to us to tell us when there was like a manager issue or whatever. And she began being a champion for people to come to HR to talk about whatever it is they needed to talk about. And I think if you go on my website right now, it talks a little bit about my story about how within HR we're sort of taught, like, you go to a certain level, right? You can't talk about like all these other things in a person's life because you might uncover something that is a protected class or whatever. And it's like, but if you just show up fully and have an interest in that person in their life, and it took an hour of my day, like I'm going to go and deal with the whole person, because that whole person brings all their stuff with them as they walk through the door. And I'm not saying it's okay for people to show up and like have that affect their work, but it does affect them. Here's this woman whose son-in-law was murdered, and she's coming to care for residents in a skilled nursing environment. How is she supposed to fully show up and be her best self to give the best care to those people? And she was doing that. But imagine if, right? She became a champion. She was like ahead for a training program that it was her idea to launch it. We brought energy leadership into that group, and they were so excited because it was something just for them. It wasn't about here's how you become a better CNA. It was about here's how you can tune into these things about yourself so that you can show up better for the work that you're so passionate about. Mm-hmm. Nobody had done that for them ever. And I just think that we're leaving so many opportunities on the table to just care about the person.
Yeah, and then the flip side is how does that person care about themselves? As you were saying, I mean, you mentioned the term self-care a number of times, and now that I have this new perspective about folks in HR, it's like I'm wondering what the pulse is from your perspective on how much those in HR apply self-care to their own lives.
Yeah. I think they're not. Like that lady left my office and I bawled my eyes out, right? Because I thought, oh my gosh, like I hope she's okay. I hope, you have all these things, because now you have a lens in somebody's life. And, she was worried about attendance. She was like, what about this on my attendance? And I'm like, stop worrying about that. Like, this is just a job. You'll go get another job, right? But we do. I wrote an article on LinkedIn the other day called like, I can't stand HR. And it has like that list of like 10 different questions that we ask ourselves every time we have an interaction with somebody. And often nobody's doing that for us. We either have to reach out to other people, and that's really what my program's about. Is offering that resource to them so that they kind of have this little tribe of people without having to worry about how they may be perceived. Take your mask off, connect with your values. I think my coach program through IPEC was so powerful, because now anytime I'm doing something, I'm checking in with my values. Mm-hmm. And if I feel a dissonance, I try to ask myself, how can I find the connection with my values? And if it doesn't align and I can't find that, what's my plan B?
You mentioned that when that woman left your office, it made you well up and you actually cried when she left. How did you process the emotions that you took in?
I actually remember going for a walk. It was long-term care. So we were on a property and it had some, pretty nice kind of outdoor areas. And I remember I had a meeting like in like 20 minutes or so. So I just kind of knew I couldn't go to that meeting feeling the way I was feeling. So I went for a walk. I went outside. We had a nice little greenery area, and I went outside and I just walked, and I breathed, and I cried a little because I was sad for her, and I mean, my eyes welled up when she was telling me the story, because I don't want it to seem like I was disconnected. I was connected with her while she was telling the story, but as you know, with coaching, there's this thing called detached engagement, where you're not in the story, you're not all involved. But you know, I was empathizing with her in the moment, and so we did tear up a little bit together. But I mean, I felt her pain; it was palpable. Um, and you know, I cried a little myself, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And um, I think that just knowing that I needed to take that time was important, and it wasn't a lot. It was like 5 minutes,
Mm.
but just that time to decompress and process it for myself. Um, and I did end up sharing it with so we had a really great director there at this particular community, very heart centered leader, hands down, best leader I've ever worked with in my entire career at this point. And I ended up telling him about the story and told him kind of like our conversation together, because he always was really great at just holding space for me. He was a great coach as well, even though he wasn't a certified coach. He was just really, really great natural coach. And, you know, I told him about it because I wanted to make sure he understood why I was in my office for an hour with this person. And it's kind of funny and unfortunate, really, in my opinion. At that point that this happened, the corporate HR was sort of questioning what I was spending my time doing, because there were some other tasks that were falling off, and because it's hard to balance it all. Um, Given the long-term benefit of what that interaction with that person had, I don't regret spending that time. So I really was lucky in that I had the ability to go to him. He kind of was like the person that held the space for me. Um, but I know a lot of people don't have that.
So you started talking about your coaching program, and I want to learn all about that because I think you've structured such a beautiful way of supporting those that are in HR, and building a community for them. So can you tell us all about what you're developing right now?
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So the program is called Heart of the Matter, and there's actually going to be a lot of other phases of Heart of the Matter, but right now I'll talk about my group program. It is targeted at HR rock stars, I call them. I call us, we're HR rock stars because we're, you know, we're up on stage, we're putting on a show, and there's a lot of kind of interacting things that go into that. So it's a 9-week virtual program. And so that means it's not just here in Colorado, it's anybody, anywhere, as long as you have a Wi Fi connection and a computer, and can kind of hop on and join these sessions. So it's going to be a mixture of really getting deeply in tune with your values. We'll be doing the ELI assessment tool, which I love. It was so powerful for me. And any other coach that or client that I've done it with has really found a lot of benefit from it. So it's using the energy leadership to really tune into where are you? You know, do you have this victim level thinking that you just kind of can't do anything? You just got to be apathetic. Are you tolerating a bunch of stuff? Are you angry? So it's really kind of taking them through that energy leadership model, so that they can tune into themselves and raise their own awareness and decide where it is that they want to grow personally, right? And then they'll be able to apply that into their professional lives as well. And then we'll have 9 weeks of virtual sessions as a group. It'll also have 2 one-on-one sessions, in addition to the debrief of the ELI, which will be a one-on-one session. And really, this is the beta launch for it. So I'm really excited about it because the people that are coming in on my legacy team are going to get to have access to all of the programs in the future for Heart of the Matter at no cost, no additional cost. And then they're going to kind of help be a part of building it. So I know I just actually spoke with a woman today, and she's got this passion for training, and she works in a smaller organization, so there's not tons of opportunity for her to do that. So I envision being able to allow her to tap into her passion to maybe help and do some of the program for the future classes. Yeah, so because that's really what a mastermind is all about. It's not about like one person teaching it. It's really about kind of collectively tapping into the talents and the passions of all the people that are there, so we learn and grow from each other, which I think is exciting. I mean, I don't know everything there is, and it's not a bitch fest. some people are like, oh, we're just going to get together and talk about our HR problems. No, this is more about yourself. And you'll be able to then take some of the kind of tools and techniques that we experience together in the program and then begin applying it into your workplace. Like that story that I shared with you just now about kind of bringing meditation into this employee's life. We will be doing things like practicing some meditation and understanding how that helps us tune into ourselves. And because I think it is a tool that has a lot of benefits. And we'll talk about neuroscience and some of how kind of there is the ability to rewire our brain and utilize some of my knowledge and experience from some of the great coaches that I've met, but also just from some of my own just passions and understanding about positive psychology and emotional intelligence and things like that. And teaching it to them so they can use it for themselves. But HR people naturally take the things that they learn and they take them back to their organization. So I just really am excited because I feel like it's going to be this catalyst for a lot of things.
Yeah. And, we talked about how this is so necessary and how this eventually this will create a shift in how corporate culture operates right now. And I'm just wondering what your vision is as this mission keeps growing and growing. What does it look like?
Yeah, so in addition to the program, I'm launching a kind of a video blog, if you will, where I'm going to be doing interviews with other leaders and HR professionals in terms of, what was their heart of the matter moment, right? I mean, when did they kind of uncover like, oh, I'm disconnected from my passion? And then what did they do about it? Did they do something with it? And then how did that have a ripple effect? Because I think just like with your show, which I love your show, it really does. It's all about telling stories and hearing new perspectives. And I think that I'm really excited about that because we all have such a wider reach than we realize. And so I think the more involvement I get from people in different areas, not just in HR, I think the wider it could spread. And so I have got kind of the video podcast thing coming down the pipeline. I'm gathering kind of my speaker lineup as we speak. So I'm really excited about that. I have visions of doing Heart of the Matter leadership programs as well, not just for HR, but kind of bringing that into organizations, whether it be for just a leadership retreat that they're doing. So having a keynote speech around that topic and having it be very interactive and engaging and helping them to kind of connect into those things for themselves on a kind of quick, 1 to 2 hour basis. But then even doing like half day workshops or full day workshops. I have so many ideas that are like just bubbling around in my head. My website is amazingjourneycoaching.com. You can email me directly at allison@amazingjourneycoaching.com, and it's ALISON. I know you'll probably put that information up there. I am on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to send me an email or drop me a message on any of those social media platforms. My Heart of the Matter program, this beta launch, is actually kicking off in a couple of weeks. So I still have a few seats open. And I'm really hoping to kind of just contribute in a positive way to our HR rockstars out there, because you need them and we need them to kind of make sure that things improve in our corporate worlds.
Well, I already know because you're already doing it. I can feel it. Like, it's not just the passion coming out, Alison. It's like, we just met today. But
Yeah.
I know that you're wired for this, and that your purpose, or at least part of your purpose, is to continue on this path forward and see where it takes you. You clearly are intelligent and you understand the world of HR, and you're a beautiful, wonderful coach, and putting the two together, it's just going to create amazing things, and I cannot wait to see them develop. So I'll be watching you.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm excited. Thank you so much for having me on today. I just loved just talking about all the things we talked about. Connecting with people is one of my true passions. So
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. And I want to thank our listeners and our viewers here today. Thank you so much for being here. I hope this was helpful for you. I don't know how many of you work in a corporate setting, but even if you don't, even if you work at a smaller company or even for yourself, the things to take away today, I think the top one is just self-care. Making sure that you're really putting that time in to find that balance. Make sure that you're still human. You know, it's so easy for us to just slip away from that and be programmed to do what we need to do, especially if we're working a lot. So please make sure you're human, check in with yourself, do the meditation and the breathing that Alison was talking about, and definitely check Alison out. So, all right, that's it for us. And thank you guys so much for watching. Take care. Bye.
If more HR people felt safe to be human, there would be more humanity in our organizations.